Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name's Joe. In this video, we'll be doing part 2 of our extended example of play from Wilderness War, which is the French and Indian War game designed by Volko Ruhnke and published by GMT originally back in 2001. So this is somewhat of a classic game at this point in time. But yeah, we're going to do the example of play, and then I'm planning on doing videos later this month using the CDG solo system to play the game Solitaire, because this is a two-player game. It is a card-driven game. And this, as I said, is part 2 of the example of play, covering the late season of the 1757 yearly turn. And we're going to kind of just dive right in. So if you are interested in seeing the video in its entirety, basically, you will definitely have needed to watch the first part. I'm going to try to do a little bit less explaining of things as we go through here, just to kind of keep things moving. This is a wider shot than what I had in part 1, and I'm probably going to zoom back in, but I did want to kind of give you a better look at most of the map. This is not the entire thing, but over here on the left edge, there's really only about 3 spots to the left of this that are off camera, and then of course you have the British Provincial Assemblies track and the VP track are on that side as well. At the top of the board, you're missing the turn track and also the top row of the French leader boxes, and you can see the kind of some of the first row here at the bottom here of the British leader boxes and the second row of French leader boxes up here. So that's enough intro. As I said, we are going to be rolling right into late season 1757. So we dealt out the cards. I did that off camera so that we would be ready to get right into the game. So we are again going to start with the French player. They have the first action phase of the turn. So we'll pick the action up here. French action phase 1, thanking his lucky star for drawing number 21, Louisbourg squadrons, just as Loudon's army is bearing down. So Loudon's army is over here in Halifax. Here's Louisbourg. The British are gathering here in Halifax to attack Louisbourg via an amphibious naval move, because this unlocks basically the St. Lawrence Seaway and the key to getting into Quebec and Montreal and so on and so forth. So the card that I just mentioned is this card right here, the Louisbourg Squadrons card. Let me focus on this. So French Navy operates aggressively. Play if you control Louisbourg, which they still do. No amphibious landings this year. Now this would be a card you would ideally play in the early season, because then it covers basically 2 turns, essentially. It's really 1, but it's both sides of 1 turn. So no amphibious landings this year on a roll of 1 to 3. Remove no French naval moves ever, and British may play Quiberon, place markers. So if you roll a 4 through 6, then obviously this would not be removed, and you would be able to use it again later on. Okay, so he decides, so the French player here in action phase 1 decides that he's going to play this card, risk the fortunes of the French Navy, and play the event, even though its benefits to him will last only 1 hand, because it's already late season, as I mentioned. He rolls a 5, so the card is discarded rather than removed from play, and there is no impact on French naval movement or the British ability to play the Quiberon event. The British player will not be able to play amphibious landing events this season, and a Louisbourg squadron no amphib marker is placed on the season marker as a reminder. This here is the aforementioned marker that will go onto the track. Okay, we'll maintain our wide angle view here for a bit longer. So it goes over to the British, and they're going to play a card for defensive. They're going to take basically a more defensive stance, because the plan to attack Louisbourg has been thwarted for this year. They will, of course, be able to give it another go in 1758. So they're going to elect to play card number 43, raise provincial regiments. But he's going to play he can't play this event because the provincial assemblies are currently reluctant, which is over here. And I know it's sideways, but we talked about this in part 1, but essentially this limits, when they're reluctant, this limits how many provincial forces the British are allowed to have on the map. So right now they're on reluctant. They start at supportive, which allows more, and then you have enthusiastic, which basically makes it unlimited. But this card played for the event would be able to add 4 northern or 2 southern provincial units and any fortifications in their department, or restore all provincials of one department to full. So we're playing it for the value. So we're playing it for the 2. And with that 2, it's going to be a construction. So we can't finish the fort under construction at Shepherd's Ferry, which is right here, because we don't have a drilled unit. So if this unit was there instead of in Winchester, and this is how we finished Winchester in part 1, if you have a drilled unit, which is any of the square units, so if either the Southern Virginian provincial was here, or we had this Pennsylvania provisional in Shepherd's Ferry, that would also work. But we do not, so we cannot do that there. So we're going to build stockades in empty cultivated spaces, and we'll do so at Ashby's Gap, which is here, and at Trenton in New Jersey, which is here. So we can take 2 stockades. Now, unlike forts, stockades are built right away because they are obviously less intensive construction projects. So they're just going to go right in there like so. Now these will help defend against further Indian infiltration on the French, the Indians doing so on the French behalf, on behalf of the French, I guess would be a better way to say that. So we did not build at Culpeper, which is here, because Culpeper has been raided, and we do not want to, offer the French any further victory points in the already raided space. So that's, as I said, raided. So now we go back to the French once again. French player decides to take advantage of the rather ill-positioned British forces to resume the offensive on the central Champlain front. So now we're talking up here again. This time with a full-fledged force. First, however, he plays 34 smallpox, and he's going to play it for the event. Now, this event is one that can be played by either side. It says, choose a space with greater than 4 units. Enemy eliminate steps equal to half a die roll rounded up, or a full roll if more than 8 units are present. Reduce all before eliminating any. So we're talking about eliminating steps. And then remove all Indians. Okay. So that was played as an event. It does not have remove at the bottom, which means it could come up again. So the British, the roll rather is a 3. And so that gets halved to 1.5, which of course rounds back up to 2. So at Fort William Henry, which is right here, so looking at the units that are there, well, this is the fort, so I'm going to put the fort counter back down there. So we have 2 regulars, and so we have 2 regulars, we have a ranger, and we have 2 provincials who are already reduced. So the provincials, by virtue of being already reduced, are ineligible. So we have to reduce 2, and our choices are now limited to the 2 regulars and Rogers. So we're going to reduce, the British player elects to reduce his 2 regulars and leave Rogers unscathed. So they can go back here to that. And now the British player anticipates the threat to the Hudson with Loudon too far away because he is in Halifax at the moment. He's going to play number 4, Campaign. Now, if you've played Washington's War, this is a card that also exists there, I'm pretty sure. If I remember correctly, it's been a while since I played Washington's War. Plays number 4, Campaign, as the event to mass a defense under Webb at Fort Edward. So here's Webb, and Fort Edward is in Hudson Carry South. So Webb has some forces that are down here, and this is why I haven't zoomed in yet. They're down here to the right. I could reshift the camera, but basically we've got 3 provincials here. We've got a Rhode Island unit, a Connecticut unit, and a Massachusetts unit. So this would allow you to activate any 2 leaders and their forces, select them, then complete all actions by one before the other. No one may move more than once. Both may naval move. Okay, so the 2 forces to be activated are Dunbar, and Dunbar's here in Albany, and his 2, 3, 4 regulars at Albany, and Johnson, who's right next door in Schenectady, and his 2-4 provincial and a 4-4 Highlander. So first we're going to move Dunbar's force to Hudson Carry South. So we'll just move Dunbar up here. Okay. And then we could, in theory, put Dunbar under Webb by moving him to the Webb box. And then we're going to do the same with Johnson. So he's going to move there as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 2 of these guys and I'm going to put them in Webb's box. And now we know that both Johnson's forces and Dunbar's forces are under Webb, along with Webb's own forces. Actually, he does not leave Johnson in Hudson, but he moves him, Hudson Carry South, he moves him back to Schenectady, which he can do because he has 6 movement. This will afford him an opportunity to recruit Mohawks or if the Iroquois arise in the future. He does have, if you notice here, I didn't talk about this before, but on Johnson's counter at the bottom here, you see M and I, M plus I. He's allowed to command both Mohawk and Iroquois. And you can see there's a Mohawk settlement here. And of course, the Iroquois are here. These 3 right here are Iroquois, the Onondaga, the Oneida, and the Tuscarora, as well as the Cayuga over here and the Seneca. They all have eyes on them. So he can command any of these tribes from these areas here. Okay, so we go back to the French now for action 3. Okay, so moving back to the French, and I zoomed in a little bit because we're going to have some action here. So they're going to play card number 1, which is another campaign card. Again, this one is an event. It is available to both sides, and it allows you again to activate any 2 leaders and their forces, select them, then complete all actions by one before the other. No one may move more than once. Both may naval move. All right. So basically the same card that the British just played, but the French are now playing it because they want to get up to some mischief here. So we have Lévis here in Quebec. And what he is going to do is he's got 3 3-4 drilled regulars. He's going to move by boat 8 spaces from Quebec to Ticonderoga. So he's basically going to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to Ticonderoga. So now he's in Ticonderoga along with Rigaud and Vandreuil, who's kind of a troublemaker to some extent. So then we're going to move Montcalm with his full army at Montreal, 2 3-4s, 1 coureurs unit, and the Potawatomi and Ojibwa move by boat to join Lévis at Ticonderoga. For convenience, the French player will consolidate all the leaders and units under Montcalm, which will add up to be 7 3-4s, 2 coureurs, 4 Indians, and 4 leaders, placing them in Montcalm's box. So we're going to take so here's Montcalm's box right here. So he's going to move all his units as well, and Montcalm himself is here in Montreal. So again, he can move by river, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So he's going to set up here in Ticonderoga. Our other 3 leaders will all go to the Montcalm box. And now the French have themselves a bit of a mighty force sitting at Fort Ticonderoga, very, very close to the British as they guard the approach to the Hudson River, because we don't want, from the British side, we would obviously not want the French to get access to the Hudson River Valley and the Riverine Highway to New York City. Okay, with a true strategic threat facing Albany, the British player expends number 47 to return Loudon's army to the Hudson. So here is 47. This is troop transports and local enlistments, but that's not what we're doing with it. We're using the three value of the card, because with 3, you're allowed to do a naval movement, an amphibious movement, with more than 1 unit. If you only have 2 or 1, you can only move 1 unit. So Loudon is going to bring Abercrombie along with 3 3-4 units and 2 4-4s to conduct a naval move to New York City, leaving Moncton and Murray behind at Halifax with 5 3-4 units. So the mass of the British Army was basically in Halifax for the presumed attack on Louisbourg. Since they cannot do that, they will be returning. So they're off map right now. And we're going to take Loudon and Abercrombie, who are the two big wig commanders of the British forces. As you can see, they're both 3-7s. They're going to move back to New York City with their forces, leaving, as mentioned earlier, Murray and Montcalm in Halifax. All right. So that is the end of the British third phase. We go to French phase 4. The French player wishes to try number 35, Courier Intercepted. So here's that card. On a roll of 3 to 6, randomly draw 1 card from your opponent's hand and place it in your own. So he's playing that card as an event. So he's going to try this before launching the expedition against Fort William Henry. He rolls a 4, which allows him to select a card at random from the British player's hand. The card he chooses turns out to be number 6, Surrender. And as you can see, it has a brown border, which means it can be played as a response to an enemy action. And we are going to put this in the French hand, so they now have an extra card. And this card will, if played, this card also will cause a reshuffle at the end of the hand unless the French player decides to hold it. So you can see there at the bottom it says reshuffle. Okay, back to the British for their 4th action. Judging that the army at Fort Edward is sufficient defense against Montcalm for the moment, the British player uses the respite from the French operations to enter reinforcements. He will play card number 58, which is the ever popular for the British, the regulars card. So they cannot be played if British regulars were already played this season, aka you could only play this once in a turn, or in a hand, I guess. Place 3 3-4 regular units and a leader if available at any port, and then remove from play. So that goes into the discard pile. And we're going to draw the leader Forbes. Now again, you would draw from a cup so that you would not know who you were getting. But in this case, we draw Forbes here. He's just a regular kind of, not all that impressive leader, but not terrible. And then we will take, he will place him at Philadelphia, which is actually off map at the moment, but he will be in Philadelphia. And this will allow him to eventually make a run at Fort Duquesne. He then takes 3 new 3-4 units and chooses to place 1 at Philadelphia, 1 at New York City, and 1 at Halifax. We will draw 3 units out, and 1 in Philly. And I know you can't see this, but that'll go under Forbes. 1 in New York, which would go under Abercrombie or Loudon. In this case, I'll just put it with Loudon's forces. And 1 in Halifax, which would go under Moncton, most likely. So we'll put him in that one in Moncton's box. And now we go back to the French, and it's French action phase 5 rather. And it's time for the French to launch the assault on the Hudson defenses. So to kick that process off, he is going to play number 16 for the value, which is just 1, but that's all he needs in this particular case. This would be a British event by the red number, so he couldn't play it for the event. So he's going to activate Montcalm, which activates all the leaders under him. That's why 1 was good enough to do this. and moves that force into Hudson Carry North, which really just involves putting, and there's no leader there, that's the problem. I'm going to put Montcalm here on the stack to indicate that he is attacking that unit. Slide this up a little bit so we get a little bit better overview of the entire situation now that we don't need to worry about Quebec anymore, because I wanted Quebec to be in the shot. That was why it was a little bit more zoomed in there locally. All right, so Montcalm has moved his entire force to Hudson Carry North. The British player attempts to intercept with Webb. He's here at Hudson Carry South. He's in command of all the units at Hudson Carry South. However, he rolls a 3 and fails. He now wishes to defend inside the fort, but only 4 of the 5 units at Hudson Carry North will fit, and he cannot attempt to avoid battle because he has already attempted interception into the space. He therefore decides to defend inside the fort, but leaves 1 unit, in this case a reduced provincial, outside to fight a battle. He places the other 4 units underneath the fort marker. So here's Montcalm. We're going to take these guys and our top provincial, and our poor New Hampshire provincials are going to be the sacrificial lambs that get to sit outside the fort and attempt to hold off the relatively ginormous French army. The French attack is strong enough to guarantee eliminating the unit. And the reason that is if we look at our combat strength, once you get up in the above 8, the no effect is no longer there. This is a 1-step unit because it's already been reduced. It's under Montcalm, so you can't really tell. So anything in this area here, instant kill. So we know this, like I said, sacrificial lambs. But the British do get to roll to see if they cause any losses on the French side. So this is not a sacrifice without potential to do damage to the enemy. He rolls a 1, which is no effect, so, that's unfortunate. There is no leader loss check because no step losses occurred. The provincial unit is removed. So goodbye to our New Hampshire provincials. Because the space is occupied by French units and a British fort, a siege begins. This was one of the things we did not see in the first part of this, is a siege. So now we get some siege action. So the French player places a siege 0 marker on the spot. And here is a siege 0. Place that right on top. He cannot yet roll on the siege table because his forces did not begin the activation in that space. So now it goes back over to the British. The British player, here's his hand. He has no more 3 value cards. That kind of limits what he can do. So he cannot activate either Webb or Loudon to respond to Montcalm. Otherwise ill-positioned to relieve the besieged fort, he decides to leave William Henry to his fate. He will play card number 17 to continue his construction of frontier defenses, placing a stockade at Wright's Ferry. Now this is the amphibious landing card, which was the one that we were hoping, from the British standpoint, to be able to use to attack Louisbourg. I wonder if that's Louisbourg. I don't know. Probably Louisbourg, right? I've been calling it Louisbourg. I'm an American, so sue me. So he can't use this for the event. Unfortunately for the British, he's going to use it for its value, which will allow him to do construction. He's going to place a stockade at Wright's Ferry. Because it's only a 1, he can only do 1 of these, so that's why it's only Wright's Ferry. Wright's Ferry, by the way, is southwest of Lancaster, and if you know your U.S. geography, you know that that is in Pennsylvania. So west of Philadelphia, basically. So there is a new stockade there as the, I guess, the southwestern flank of the British colonies are being bulked up here. Now we would go to French action phase 6. The French player now prosecutes his siege of William Henry, playing number 8 to activate Montcalm's force. So he could use this for the event, which would give him a +2 on a siege roll if attacking. But that would be like a second card because you have to activate the force first. So he's playing it for its value of 1 to activate Montcalm, which allows him to prosecute his siege. So now you, with Montcalm's tactical rating of 2, so again, if we look at Montcalm here, and we talked about this briefly in the first part, but here's Montcalm's counter, and you can see the 2 in the blue box. That indicates his tactical value. He's a good commander. He knows his stuff, so that guarantees that they will actually pass their siege roll because they get a +2. So as we can see on the siege table, your modified die roll, if it's a 3, your siege level goes up by 1. Now, you can't roll a 0 on a 6-sided die, so we're going to get a 3 with, even if he rolls a 1, it's a +1. If he rolls anything like a 5 or a 6, or 4, 5, or 6, it would actually be a +2. Because the French player wants to avoid the possibility of casualties, including Montcalm, and wants to capture the fort intact to speed his expedition toward Albany, he plays 6, card number 6, Surrender, which again has a brown border, and this is the card he's pilfered from the British. It's playable during the phase. He places an event card face up on the draw pile, or this event card rather, which will be a reminder that a reshuffle will occur before the next hand. As a result of the surrender card, the British fort marker at Hudson Carry North is replaced with a completed French fort marker, and the 4 British units there are moved to the fort at Hudson Carry South. Essentially, this means, and you can read it on the card, capture the fort or fortress intact. Enemy player places defender at his closest besieged fortification, and it causes a reshuffle. So in this case, that means the British have accepted terms, essentially, and their men are going to march out, and they're going to head to Hudson Carry South, and I'm going to put them in Webb's box to just kind of keep this clean, and then the siege marker will go away. Montcalm will remain here, and this marker will be removed and replaced with a French fort. So there's our French fort. We put Montcalm on there. And because they captured the fort, the French receive 2 victory points, moving the marker to French 5. Now, I messed up in the previous video because the French successfully had 2 rated markers, which are half victory point each, placed on the map. That doesn't actually do anything until the end of the year. So it's still on 3, but the capture of the fort moves it to 5. Now, the British player can take advantage of the fact that his fortification fell to a force, including both drilled and Indian forces, and immediately plays number 7, Massacre, which is another card with a brown border, which means it can be played during the phase. And it says, all Indians in the space are eliminated, receive 1 victory point. So this is after play when an enemy stack of both Indian and drilled troops units capture a stockade space, fort, or fortress. A massacre has taken place, and the Indians are removed. So in this case, under Montcalm here, he's got several Indians, and the British receive 1 victory point, which moves it back to French 4. He loses his Algonquin. Oh yeah, this guy is a courier, so he loses all of these units. So I'm going to pick this guy up here. Potawatomi, the Ojibwa, the Algonquin, which was reduced, and the Caughnawaga. Sorry, the blue band threw me off. So these 4 units are removed. They go off map, and the French markers are removed from Caughnawaga and Lac de Dieu Montagnes. Again, I mentioned this in the first one. My pronunciations are going to be terrible at times. So please forgive me for that. Yeah, so those two are removed because there are no longer any Algonquin or Caughnawaga units on the map. All right, so now we go to British Action Phase 6, and he's down to 2 cards now. He's got light infantry, so he's going to play this card here. Place 2 light infantry units and a leader if available at any fortresses. So instead of a port, you place it in a fortress. So he's going to draw Bradstreet this time. Bradstreet is one of the weaker British leaders. And he's going to place him in Albany with 126 unit. So these we have not seen yet in the game, these light infantry. So I'm just pulling random. So we saw the commander. Here's one of the light units. As you can see, it's a 2/6. This is gauges. We're going to put those in Albany. So I'm going to place the leader in Albany, and I'll place him in Bradstreet's. The light infantry will go in Bradstreet's box, and the other one goes to Halifax, and that one is this guy right here. And he'll go to Halifax, and we'll put him under Murray. That's the end of the British phase. So now we're in phase 7 for the French. Having lost Montcalm's Indians to an unexpected massacre, the French player reconsiders his campaign plan. Looking at his hand, this would be said hand right here. We've got a campaign, we've got a Western Indian Alliance and French regulars, so he can pull in some new troops as well. Looking at his hand, he decides he would like to play both the regulars and the Indian Alliance as events, leaving him with too few activations to drive on Albany. Also, with British strength continuing to build along the Hudson, he decides it is time to shift to the defensive there. Furthermore, a buffer of wilderness is desirable. So he's going to play number 4, campaign. It's actually number 2 that I have in my hand as an event, using it to activate Montcalm's army plus Villars at Fort Frontenac. Let's do it that way. Cataraqui, which is right here. And he commands a courier unit. And that would be, he has a regular unit there as well, but he's going to command Lay here. So he will move with Lay, and we will end up putting this unit here, put this unit here in there. So Villars and this guy are going to move out. So Montcalm moves north by boat, dropping off a small winter garrison for Fort Carillon. Okay, so let's leave Villars here for the moment and talk about Montcalm. So he's going to decide to take Montcalm, and he's going to move up, and on his way, he's going to destroy this fort, which reduces his victory points by 1, but removes the ability for the British to have it. So they captured it, and ultimately it ended up being a wash between the massacre and having to destroy it. But on his way through Ticonderoga, he's going to drop off Bougainville, and along with 2 3/4s and a coureurs unit. So that would be these guys right here. These guys right here will get dropped off. They will go in Bougainville's box, which is at the top of the map and off camera. But two regular drilled units, 3/4s, and a courier. And then we have, he's going to continue on, Montcalm that is, and go to Montreal, and that's where he will spend the winter. Because you do have to worry about attrition during the winter. So now that that is taken care of, we can talk about what Villars is doing. So with Villars, the French player takes advantage of Montcalm having drawn British forces away from the Mohawk River. Villars and the couriers move by land over the 6 spaces to Schenectady, whether by Oswego or West Canada Creek does not matter, to raid. So we're going to take Villars here, and we will say he goes to Nayaore Bay, Ultimately, he's heading for Schenectady. So we can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then into Schenectady. Or we could have gone through Oswego, which would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Either way, it does not matter, as it says in the game, in the book. Okay, so Villers is attempting to raid. Now, Bradstreet is here in Albany and has a chance to raid because he's actually got a 1 for a tactics rating, so that gives him a little bit of a better chance. But to cap the bad year for the British, as it says in the book, he rolls a 2, which fails, leaving Johnson alone to face these guys. So Johnson is alone with enemy units and must retreat, so he's going to move to Albany as well. So Villers gets to come in here and raid the stockade. So again, we're going to look at our raid table, which is right here. And this time we are raiding a stockade. And he rolls a 4 on the stockade column, and he does get a +1 because just like Bradstreet, he's got a 1 for tactics. Actually, Johnson does as well. So that gives him, sorry, out of focus. That gives him a +1. And the +1 here on the raid table with a roll of 4 becomes a 5, which is success, comma 1. The 1 indicates a step loss on the attacker side. So his courier here becomes a 0-6. And at the end of the raid, these guys go to the nearest French fortification, which is in, let me put this back up here, and we'll put Villers here in with Bougainville in Ticonderoga. This guy gets a raided counter, and the stockade goes away. Now we go to British action phase 7. This is his last card, which is number 49. Call out militias. Place 1 friendly militia unit into a friendly militia box, or restore 2 to full strength. He would like to add a militia unit, especially to the southern box, in order to receive a -1 against raids there. However, he also wants to save at least 1 unit from the attrition looming at the overcrowded Fort Edward. He uses the card individually, so not for the event, to activate the 4/4 Highlander unit at Hudson Carry South and moves it to better winter quarters in Albany. So here in Hudson Carry South under Webb, there are a lot of units, as we just heard. And he's going to take the British elects to take the 4/4 unit, which is this guy right here, who's been reduced, and he's going to move it to Albany, and we'll put it under Bradstreet. So with the French player still holding 2 cards, rather. I almost said 3, but he's only got 2. So these are his 2 cards that are remaining, and he can play them in succession. So he'll play 56. As an event, we'll place 2 3/4s at Quebec and remove all the leaders mentioned on the card, by the way, are already in the game. So he doesn't get those, and he's going to place 2 3/4 units in Quebec. And the card is removed from play. So I'm going to put these in Quebec, which is sort of off camera, but you can see the bottom of it right there where I put those 2 units. And now he will play number 26, which is the Western Indian Alliance. He's going to play this as an event. You can play if you have a fort at Ohio Forks. So here we see Ohio Forks. You can see it does have a fort. So back to the card, you can see place at orange, and or if you have a fort at Niagara, blue and orange. Do they have one at Niagara? They do. They also have one at Niagara. Striped Indian units totaling half a die roll rounded up, or a full roll if French victory points are greater than 4. It is not. They're at 3. Place units at their settlements. For every 1 you could place, you may instead restore 2 to full. So the French would roll and halve. So he rolls a 1, which halved and rounded up remains a 1. So that's a bad roll. He can flip 2 reduced Indian units for every new unit he may place. So instead of placing a new unit, he's going to flip the Mingo and the Shawnee here, who were reduced in part 1 of this, in the early season phase of this this 1757 turn. So they get flipped back to full strength, and that ends it. So nobody has any cards left, so we are now done with the late season. So we have Indians and leaders go home. This was the last action phase of a late season, so the Indian and leaders go home phase follows. There are no lone leaders, and the only Indians not in fortifications or their settlements is the Mississauga unit at East Delaware, which is right here. So he's going to take this unit and place it in the Mississauga settlement space. That's a little hard to see. It's right here. So it's right on the western shore of Lake Ontario there. And now remove French rated markers. So the French have 3 markers for 1.5 victory points. So there is one at Culpeper, which is right down here. There is one at Kinderhook right here. And there is one at Schenectady right here. So we remove those 3. They get 1.5 victory points, which is rounded up to 2. So their victory point tracker moves up to 5, which I know you can't see, but it's a 5. Now we go to the winter attrition phase. All units outside friendly cultivated spaces are in fortifications and in stacks of 4 units or fewer, except for Webb's army of 10 units at Hudson Carry South. Ranger unit, an auxiliary, is unaffected. 3 drilled units are already reduced, of which the British player must eliminate 2. So every odd unit, the first and the third. He chooses to eliminate the reduced provincial and the 2-4 regular. That would be these 2 right here, leaving a reduced Royal American unit in place. He then flips the remaining 6 provincial and regular units in the space to their reduced side. The British have lost more troops this year to deprivation and sickness than in battle. Now we go to the victory check phase. Neither player has more than 10 victory points, so the game proceeds to 1758. The surrender card has appeared, so the players will shuffle the discard and draw piles together to form a fresh draw pile for early season 1758. The recap reads, the year 1757 has seen poor planning and mishandling of opportunities by both sides. Although the French made only small gains, they did manage to keep the British off balance in what must have been a disappointing year for King George. In 1758, the British must make better use of their growing superiority in forces, perhaps with major expeditions up the Hudson to Louisbourg, or in the west to destroy the bases of the French and Indian frontier raiders. Now it's time for you to carry the flag forward and improve on this record. Well, that is the end, my friends, and so we are going to wrap this video up. As always, I will ask you to please consider liking, sharing, and if you're not already a subscriber, to perhaps consider subscribing to help support the channel. That would be greatly appreciated, as is any support you might provide via shares or likes. Thank you, even if you decide not to do any of those things. Thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of it. And we'll return to see something else down the road. But yeah, that is going to do it. My name's Joe. This is the Hexed Encountered channel. And until next time, as always, happy gaming.